What am I doing? Right? So, welcome. Welcome to life. This is the first episode of this project of self help. For the most motivation of it is just a measurement for the diary of this philosophical voyage to find some meaning and find some concrete or usable information from this enormous universe of randomness. And well, we'll try to use a bit of logic and a bit of imagination to create this kind of perspective, not necessarily universal, but a thing that could be built as a universal law for the existence of humans and the logic behind our existence here. So we're going to set sail, and I hope you enjoy. And sail ahead, Captain. So this my motivation mainly for this thought experiment is just to understand or try to find meaning in our existence, as complex as it is, and still it's so difficult to not simplify, not have concrete and not even concrete. They are mere illusions of our perception that we consider reality something, and well, imagination the rest. And how should we look at concrete knowledge? Where does truth for the individual start, and when it starts to become less reality with the existence of another being like the individual? And then you start to understand that the meaning that was once individual and absolute, it's now relative, in the sense that we kind of have our preconcepts of what is reality, but we have to be open-minded, I guess, to the uncertainty of our senses, the uncertainty of our flawed logic. And at most, we have to be courageous enough to not submit to the fear of not knowing and entering in the mistake realm and the error and the possibility of incorrectable error. But I believe that the best point of start in this conscience and this truthfulness, it's starting with the pure truth, with the one truth that I'm certain and no one else is certain about it. It's my existence, my conscience. That's the only truth, the absolutely truth in life. Because if you really think about the conscious is the only observer of itself, then it's an absolute truth. There's no way of empirically not finding it true. And for the most of all, it's just what I know is that I exist. I think Descartes, although a bit simplistically, but in a sense very nicely constructed, and with the simplicity of the proposition, it actually gives it a truth. Like, obviously, it's not a reality that you are conscious in this world, and that you're interacting with the world. But while you are in the non-material, while you are in your head, well, everything is true for you. There's no one to question it. So, therefore, the truthfulness must come from the conscient being, right? The individual one. And what rules would dictate for this individual being, right? We're talking about life, an individual form of life. We know that it is born, and it ends up taking some time in this material world, and then its existence for the other observers is closed, and we declare them dead to the others and non-existent to the others. But while there's no other, we could find, like, this individual being is the only observer in this hypothetical scene, right? So, in some way, all the things that I can imagine by myself are truth. Like, nothing that depends on confirmation, everything that I, by myself, am able to measure, it becomes reality for me in this situation. The reality of living, the reality of, well, if I'm the only observer, I don't have that certainty that I'm going to die. That's true. Because no one ever died before. So, and maybe I don't even have a notion that I was born, due to the fact that I can lose my memory, right? We don't have the memory of being born. At least, I would say not the majority. I don't want to enter in the certainty realm, and let's keep it uncertain. But let's see what kind of information we can still get out of it, right? So, in some way, you know that you are existing, and that's the only thing that you know for a fact. So, we can start by questioning, like, what are the conditions for existence, right? It doesn't make much sense that this existence would exist alone. Like, let's imagine an emptiness, and this conscient being, individual in emptiness, well, it wouldn't have purpose in a sense, or maybe it would have like a transcendent purpose, like a way of giving purpose to himself without any reference, just by its will and pure will. But it's so complicated because the intuition comes to mind with this comparative view, like this idea of time. We only have the idea of time because we have the idea of movement, and the idea of movement is dependent on time. It's the variation of position throughout the time. Therefore, we only have presence of time with variation. And would we be changing if there was no condition outside of our existence? Would we keep, would we be self or autonomous enough in our ability to give meaning? And being able, without any reference, to give meaning as something, well, transcendent. Well, I don't know. But if my intuition allows me to speculate, I would say that, and Maslow, I think it was the one that proposed that maybe, the only warranty that we have is that, well, our conscience is kind of dependent on the material body. So it's not a certainty, but at least we are warned that while we still have our physical body, we have some kind of conscience with it. Like, so probably one of the meanings that we can give to life is, well, the universal one, right? We look around us to the other forms of life, and they seem to always have the purpose to survive. But in which way is a conscious purpose from life, or just a illusion of purpose coming from this capacity of humanity to give purpose to things, right? And if, I don't know if this is kind of a generalization, so I'll be kind of, I'll not use, I'll use it with a pinch of salt, or wherever is the expression. But let's say that we know that humans can give purpose to things. Like a nail was once an ingot of iron, and we picked up the iron without any purpose, and we gave him purpose. Therefore, we kind of can think about ourselves as a thing, or our life as a thing, perhaps. Therefore, we can give purpose to our life. Is it logically acceptable, this deduction? I'm not sure. But if it's part of the capacity to the human to give its own purpose, well, then I guess the meaning of life, it's just giving purpose to yourself. Well, I don't like certainty. This doesn't seem to align. Like, maybe security, yeah, we kind of expect like that our body needs to keep going, and to have the mind with it, and to have the senses that our body gives us, like the vision, every single one of our senses, right? So at least our conscious is the senses that we use to be conscient are dependent on the material. Therefore, if we don't want the ability to change, we have to maintain our material body. So in this sense, we can give us the purpose to survive, and well, we are purposeful and we are secure, but it seems that our purpose is very reductive, right? Like, in some way, if we think as the individual one without any conditions outside of him is completely free, right? There's no ethical or moral implications with its actions because, well, he will deal with the consequences and is going to be the one that is going to deal with the consequences of his actions. In some way, this is kind of interesting to look at it in the way that even though there's nothing to condition him, he conditions himself by the freedom of choice. But the condition, it's always the consequence of our choice. Cause effect, right? It seems logical, and I don't know, Newton has passed a bit over, we've passed a bit over classic mechanics, but in some way, cause effect, although we can look at relativity and puts every concept as causality into check, right? Because, well, but I do feel that it should make sense, right? You are free to choose, but your condition is the consequence of your action. And maybe translating to us, maybe this sense of, well, of being, I don't know, like, I'm missing the word, the lack of freedom that maybe some of us feel comes from, yeah, perhaps we are still handling the consequences of our previous actions, and that's why sometimes we feel that we don't have this free will. Maybe we're just conditioning ourselves. Maybe it was a decision that took me to a mistake that makes me afraid of having the same mistake again, and therefore conditioning my decision further. Well, it seems interesting. So if you have freedom of choice, then you kind of have freedom of purpose. If you are giving purpose yourself, you kind of can give whatever purpose you want, right? So there's this freedom, but we talked about security as well. So in a sense, the individual will try to be free, as secure as it is. Well, that does seem like a balance, but if you're free, you're free. If you want to just go for freedom, well, you have to be conscious that you're sacrificing your security and vice versa. And, well, if we conclude things like this, well, it becomes like a problem of optimization, right? Trying to find the perfect balance, and maybe that would be the true perfect way of living. But do we have the capacity to reach that? Especially, well, we do know that we die as a collective, but as an individual, he doesn't know that he's going to die. So, well, whoa. Does the thought of is that conditions society and the collective? Is this notion that we're going to die that takes away all the freedom from our existence? Because although we postulated that freedom comes with conditioning, well, it's still the law of freedom by itself, right? Well, we could take into account that it could avoid the consequence, but it still is an act towards that consequence. It's still a condition, right? So I can't even postulate an idea that you're not conditioned by the consequences of your action without the implementation of a legal system or anything else. It's basic. You're going to have to deal with that, right? And somehow, when we think about the difference between security and you have to have the to be part of your will to survive and to look for your sustenance, but comparing to a collective group of humans, well, then you kind of alleviate this sense of security because you are cooperating. Probably, now this is kind of an assumption, it's not logical per se. But yeah, I still think that we kind of have to have the sense of security, like not saying from a collective, the view, what does the individual sees in the collective, right? This sense of society, this easiness that comes with cooperation, well, it only points for the alleviation of this need to censor my free will because I need to survive, and I should be able to be more free because somehow I'm less conditioned about my security because society has taken care of that. But maybe not. Maybe since I'm part of the society as well, therefore I have to care about the security of society itself. Then is it scalable? This idea of a single society, that it is that society as a conscience, like a conscience made of the collective of the society, is that dictates what would be the freedom of will of security of society. Well, but if my security is dependent on society, and society has also this, we can conceptualize like society as a complex life existence, but we can't possibly say that conscience is associated with life and not with the human, because we only have the only truth that we have is that I am conscious, but well, I don't even know if my colleagues are conscious. Maybe I should postulate that, well, they still have the need for security because they were individuals as well, I guess, and they need the sense of freedom and like will and well, and well, if I look at society from the perspective of the individual, I do have the interest of keeping society alive. So would that make me an it's a selfish act? Since my security is dependent on the security of society, I should care about the security of society. Is that a selfish thought? I think it should be the basis of altruism there, right? The fact that my own free will take me to consider the security and the free will of the others. It's a normal, it should be a logical path, right? But maybe not. Maybe I don't. But the thing is, like, society is not only a form of security; it's also a form of entertainment, right? If you are alone, we can, yeah, give purpose and entertain us with the environment, but who, how does society and the collective affect this perception of enjoyment and fulfillment that we look in entertainment, right? Like, for our society, yeah, let's go consumism, maintain us entertained, and we need to have new ideas. Except, like, on today's age, there's no freedom there of choice. Everything is a copy or something similar to the other, and we're all trying to do the same things. Even I, doing a podcast with everyone in the world doing a podcast. Yeah, maybe we are lacking a bit of free will, right? we are doing all the things like everyone is doing, because, well, is it what? Is it fear? Fear of not belonging in society, of not being excluded? Yeah, it's a possibility of exclusion from society. So you ought to control all your actions, or you would be excluded. But does it make sense? Does this fear make sense to control my freedom? Can I avoid the condition of fear in my choice? Well, if we think about the virtues of Aristotle's, yeah, maybe. I can be brave, I can be courageous, and not in the sense that I don't have fears, but in the sense that, yeah, I know that I'm fierce. I know that it's blocking my free will, but I want to have it. I want to have my free will, so I'll fight it, and I have a motive to fight my fears, so I can be free to find my joys in life. Yeah, but at the same time, your fear seems like a safety mechanism. Like, if you start to sacrifice your security for freedom, would a shorter time, an individual being will not have a sense of security, now that I'm thinking about, because it doesn't know the risks of life. It doesn't know the probability of dying. So why would it have a sense of security? This sense of security also only comes from society and comparison and knowing that you're going to die. Whoa. So it's the individual being is just free, and all the sense of security and this breaking of freedom comes from the collective and not from the individual. So the individual, it's only freedom, and when we kind of get to the collective, we start to get this notion of security and the this idea that we are learning together, and the mistake of one is the knowledge of the other. And well, yeah, we have a lot of sources of error and knowledge, and there's like an exponential increase of knowledge by experience and by, well, yeah. So we are dependent on knowledge to society. So we only start to understand the soul, the individual being will never understand because it doesn't have a reference. Yeah, maybe. But then our knowledge is all relative. There's no absolute knowledge. It's it's always relative to the consequences for me, for the others, for and well, if there are like emotional or conscient consequence for the others, I don't even know how to comprehend that. Like, it's not my perception. Like, how can I understand what I'm doing wrong to your mind? Like, all these concepts that seem like unattainable for a human being as it is. Well, we do have technology, we do have this capacity of inventing possibilities of measurement, but they are flawed as the maker. Like, perfection doesn't come from imperfection, right? There's no way that but how come, like, what is perfection? Like, the perfect if the human being is the only human being is the perfect human being, what is this sense of perfection that we are so anxious for? And so, yeah, because it probably comes from the fear of mistake, but the fear of mistake only comes from this collective fear of making myself, like, making, yeah, but we are risking altogether, but at the same time we are gaining altogether, because we don't only lose with the error, with, yes, the certainty that we had, or the belief that we had was crushed, but well, we should be able to live with it, like, and keep going, right? Maybe. Well, as the individual, I guess it's it's here that it stops, right? Like, the next step should be thinking as a social entity. Like, how would society as a whole, as a unit, as a could it be a existential being, a complex, a form of human beings, like a more complex version of, well, which sense humans are the cells of society, and society is the organism that is conscient and doing stuff, right? It's kind of weird, this, it's kind of, because, yeah, it's the culmination, like, these big improvements in society, it comes from, like, a will. This all those actions take us to that motive, right? Like, maybe to increase our security, and that's why we have science and well, maybe ethics, probably. it comes from this sense of security, individual and as a social, as a social being, right? But would we as a society can be a unique being? And if all humanity belongs to this unique being, does all the facts that this society has conscience of, does it make the reality for society? Does it make then an absolute reality for the being, the individual one? And in which sense is like this idea that the individual life form is finite and is going to die? Well, yes, it does, but when it's a more organized and a more complex being, like in this case society, well, society as it has the potential to be eternal, right, due to reproduction. Like while we keep the same number of humans in the society, it seems that it has the potential to go on and on and on, right? So what would be the limit? What would end humanity? And can society as a conscious being protect itself from it? Maybe this stays for the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any answer for me or any perspective for me in this ocean of possibilities and senses of reality, please, I would enjoy a lot. It would give me a lot of, it would be very, very helpful on the other perspectives, like to break this bias of certainty, of almost pride, right? Like, but thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that you had a good time listening to this, and well, see you in the next episode, please.